Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to a time when a woman's morning didn't begin with an alarm clock or a blinking phone, but with the muted crunch of straw beneath bare feet and the flicker of olive oil lamps. You wake before the birds begin their chatter, the sky still ink dark, the wind just a breath above silence. There's no espresso, no playlists, just the soft clink of clay bowls as you prepare the first of many quiet offerings. You wrap your shawl tighter. The air bites a little even inside. Bread must rise, water must be drawn, and children must be clothed. The world you live in doesn't honor busyness, it expects it. And yet there you are, moving in the hush before sunrise, already doing things no one will thank you for, and probably won't even notice. In Bible times, rising early wasn't just a virtue, it was survival. Proverbs 31 says she rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household, not because she's obsessed with being productive, but because someone has to remember the lentils, the grain, the pacing of the dough. If she didn't, who would? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You carry a clay jar on your hip, humming as you walk the short, uneven path toward the well. The other women haven't arrived yet. It's your favorite time. The stars are still visible. You savor the silence. You know the weight of water, how it shifts as you walk, how to hold your body just right to keep the jar steady. You know how to tend to the fire without choking it, how to wake a child without scaring them. These little things, you don't think of them as wisdom, but they are. Historians still argue whether women in ancient Israel were truly managers of the household or simply caretakers. But let's be honest, if the family ate, if the oil was pressed, if the tent held in the rain, it was because of you. And not much has changed. You still do the invisible things. You're the one who restocks the toilet paper, who remembers birthdays, who knows which mug your partner secretly loves but never asks for. You're the one who makes mornings feel like mornings. They say the Proverbs 31 woman is rare, but maybe she's just uncelebrated. Maybe she looks more like you than you realize. Here's a fringe detail. Some scholars believe that rising early wasn't just literal, but symbolic, meaning a woman who gets ahead of trouble before it begins. Like you do when you refill the medicine before the last dose, when you clean the fridge before it smells, when you ask your child what's wrong before they know how to say it. You don't rise early because you're trying to impress God. You rise early because something in you knows the sacredness of preparing what no one sees. And while the modern world might trade that for hustle culture or productivity apps in the quiet of that kitchen, kneading dough with hands that carry both exhaustion and grace, you're embodying an ancient rhythm, the same one they sang about, the same one that still holds today. You move quietly, but your impact isn't quiet. It echoes through the rooms you care for, the people you feed, and the peace you create. So tonight, if you're listening in bed thinking about all you didn't finish, just pause. You already rose before the light. And that's the first sign. The door creaks. Not loud, just enough to let in a ribbon of sunlight. You pause mid-step and glance around the room that's already moving because of you. The jug is on the table. The fire is steady. The air smells faintly of ground barley and smoke. You breathe in not to admire your work, but to prepare for more of it. Because this house doesn't keep itself, and hearts don't stay soft on their own. You walk past a basket that's finally mended, the one with the split at the bottom you patched using twine from that old curtain you were supposed to throw away. You didn't throw it away, of course. You repurposed it, like you always do. You make empires out of leftovers, peace out of noise, homes out of nothing. The Proverbs 31 woman watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Historians still debate how much authority ancient women actually had within their homes. But anyone who's ever held a family together knows authority isn't always about permission, it's about consistency. You make decisions no one notices. You prevent problems no one knew were coming. You build with love so baked into the walls no one even knows it's there. You see that in the way you plan meals, not for impressing guests, but for softening moods. You know which family member needs quiet and which needs a silly dance in the kitchen. You see the ripple when you hold your temper and how it changes everything silently. You're not trying to control. You're managing the emotional weather of the house with the wisdom of someone who's lived through storms. And you don't do it for credit. You do it because deep down you believe people should be able to come home to warmth even if they don't say thank you. Even if you're not sure they notice. You know what it's like to give your best energy to things that vanish within hours: cleaning, sorting, calming, resetting. You do it anyway. Quirky fact, in some ancient towns, women used to sew their family's entire year's clothing during the quietest month, usually in late summer. They did it while humming, planning, and listening to children argue about goats. No one applauded, but their work shaped how a family entered winter. That's you. You build with invisible bricks, with grocery lists and goodnight routines, with the right tone of voice when someone's had a bad day. You are not idle. Even when you're lying down, you're probably thinking about what needs refilling, what needs mending, who needs comforting, and no one calls you a builder, but you are. Historians argue whether women in Proverbs had help servants, younger daughters, neighbors. Maybe. But even with help, someone had to carry the mental load. You know that load. You carry the birthdays, the allergy list, the password. No one else remembers the memory of that one pan that burns on the left side. That's your kind of architecture, quiet, essential, and constant. You're not standing on scaffolding with blueprints. You're stirring soup and diffusing arguments between siblings and answering texts with, "I'll handle it." That's your blueprint. And maybe the world doesn't see it, but heaven does. You build quiet empires at home. And that's the second sign. You run your fingers along a folded linen, checking its hem. It's not perfect, but it holds. Like most things you manage, you take what's fraying and figure out how to make it useful again. A dress that's too short becomes a cleaning rag. A chipped bowl holds garlic. A broken rhythm becomes a lullaby because you know how to stitch beauty out of loss. You trade mend and multiply. In the book of Proverbs, she is likened to the merchant ships that bring food from afar. But this isn't about international trade or exotic spices, it's about resourcefulness. She is someone who sees opportunity where others see scraps, and that's you. Your car's probably overdue for maintenance. You've patched your favorite shoes twice. You budget like a chess master, know where the cheapest eggs are, and can turn 5 pantry items into dinner that tastes like a miracle. You're not stingy, you're strategic. You don't waste, because you know what it's like to not have enough. Historically, women in agrarian cultures like ancient Israel didn't just handle home life. They worked the land, spun fabric, bought and sold in the marketplace. Some scrolls even mention trade negotiations in back alleys with nothing but a bolt of cloth and a solid stare. Historians still argue whether these women had legal ownership or informal power. But either way, they made things move. So do you. You make things stretch. You make them last. You mend things, close plans, people. There's a quirky scroll fragment from the Dead Sea region that mentions a wife who used her husband's torn cloak to fashion a baby sling. It's written like an afterthought. But you read that and smile because you've done that. Maybe not literally, but you've found ways to repurpose a no into a not yet, or a broken plan into a new beginning. You multiply what's been handed to you, not through magic, but through determination, grace, and a kind of stubborn optimism no one taught you. You just picked it up somewhere between heartbreak and Wednesday laundry. Your wallet may not be full, but your spirit isn't empty. And that spirit makes things bloom. It notices the half-rotten banana and turns it into banana bread. It senses when the mood's off in the house and lights a candle, plays music, or starts a funny story. It doesn't fix everything, but it shifts the air. You barter with the day. You negotiate with circumstances. You bring in more than what you started with. And maybe you don't realize it, but people around you feel it. They may not say thank you for multiplying joy today, but it lingers in their shoulders the way they breathe easier when you're around. You don't just survive, you create space for others to breathe. And that's power. You don't hoard, you don't show off, but you multiply, and that's the third sign. The toddler's scream pierces the air just as the lentils start to boil over. You're holding one shoe mentally calculating how late you'll be and still trying to remember if you turned off the iron. The house isn't peaceful, but it doesn't unravel because you're in it. You guard joy like a gatekeeper. In Proverbs 31, it says, "She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come, not because life is easy, not because she's naive, but because she's seen enough, endured enough, and chosen again and again not to let bitterness take root." You don't fake happiness. You fight for peace. You protect it like something sacred because it is. Historians still argue whether laughing at the future meant fearlessness, preparation, or divine trust. But maybe it's simpler. Maybe it means she didn't let tomorrow's storm steal today's sunlight, and neither do you. There's a bowl in your kitchen that's older than your youngest child. It's cracked, slightly stained, and still useful. That's kind of how your heart feels some days. Not untouched by pain, but still open. Still soft. Still giving. You don't guard joy with loud speeches. You guard it with little things, deciding not to respond to that rude comment. Playing a silly game with your child even though you're tired. Choosing hope even when everything looks uncertain. Quirky fact. In some ancient households, women would place herbs like hyssop or myrrh at entryways, not just for scent, but to welcome calm and ward off bad energy. You do this in your own way, maybe with soft lighting favorite music, or that weird dance move that makes everyone laugh even when they're grumpy. You don't let the world pour its chaos into your sanctuary. You can't always control what happens outside, but you draw a line around what joy is allowed to survive. And that line often starts with you. You've probably had days where you've cried in the bathroom, then walked out smiling. Not because you're pretending, but because someone needed your calm more than you needed to stay crumpled. That's not fake. That's courage. Sometimes guarding joy means stepping away. Sometimes it means staying silent. Sometimes it means speaking when it's hard. And always it means holding space for beauty even in a storm. People may never realize how much effort it takes for you to keep things warm, inviting light. But you know, and so does God. You guard joy like a gatekeeper. And that's the fourth sign. The room goes quiet for just a moment. Someone finally fell asleep. The dishes are drying. The candle you forgot you lit has melted halfway down. You sit for a second, maybe the first time today, and someone asks, "What do you think I should do?" You pause, consider, and say just a few words. They nod like you've read their soul. You speak few words, but they matter. The Proverbs 31 woman is described as one who opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. It doesn't say she talks all the time. It says that when she does, people listen, because her words carry the weight of experience, love, and truth. You don't speak to hear your own voice. You speak to lift others. In Bible times, most women weren't public teachers or rabbis, but they shaped generations with the quiet lessons whispered between chores, over stews, and by lamplight. Historians still argue whether women were truly teachers in their households, but ask any child who gave them their first real lesson in right and wrong. It wasn't a priest, it was a mother, a grandmother, or an aunt who knew when to say just enough. You may not quote scripture with dramatic flair, but you know how to say, "I believe in you." You know how to ask, "Are you sure that's the truth?" You know when to stay silent and when to say, "I love you," too much to lie. Your words aren't many, but they land. There's a quirky Babylonian proverb that says, "A woman of many words draws the wind, but the silent one shifts the sand," meaning still voices move things deeper. You've likely said something in passing, maybe a one-liner at breakfast or a text sent mid-laundry that someone carried for years, and you'll never know it. You speak from a place of watching, knowing, sensing what others miss. You've stayed up late thinking about what someone didn't say. You've written a message and deleted it because you chose peace. That's wisdom. Not the kind people applaud, but the kind that keeps the world from spinning off its axis. You don't argue to win. You don't explain yourself to feel important. You share when it helps, when it heals, and when someone truly needs to hear truth with a soft edge. Historians still debate what the law of kindness meant in the original Hebrew. Some say it meant compassion, others say it meant teaching with restraint. You live both. You hold back anger when it would be easy to unleash it. You offer encouragement when you're running on fumes. You choose kindness not because it's easy, but because it's right. Your words might not trend. They might not be framed on walls, but they stick to hearts. They reroute shame. They build trust. They offer home. And most of the time, you don't even realize you've done it. You speak few words, but they matter. And that's the fifth sign. The crowd doesn't part for you. No trumpet sounds when you enter the room. And yet somehow people notice you. Not because you're flashy, not because you're loud, but because you settle the space like a weight that brings balance to a swaying boat. You carry strength in your spine, not your voice. The Proverbs 31 woman isn't described as glamorous or intimidating. She's called strong-clothed in strength and dignity. But her strength isn't performative. It doesn't stomp or shout, it just is. Steady, consistent, and deeply rooted. You don't lead with a resume, you lead with presence. Historians still argue whether strength in ancient texts referred to physical labor, moral virtue, or economic contribution. But maybe it was all of it. Strength in those days wasn't about how loud you were. It was about whether people could lean on you without fear of collapse. People lean on you. They ask your opinion in hard moments. They call you when life unravels. Not because you solve everything, but because you listen. Because you don't panic. Because something about the way you sit in the mess with them makes the mess seem survivable. You're probably not even sure why they come to you. You might joke, "I'm not a therapist." And yet you always have the right mug, the quiet nod, the well-timed silence that makes someone spill their truth. You don't crave the spotlight. You hold the flashlight, shining it where others need to look. There's a quirky Talmudic story about a woman who saved an entire village simply by reminding them to check the grain stores during a drought. No drama, just steady guidance. It's not a tale of heroics. It's a tale of awareness and the courage to say, "Let's look again." You've done this, not with grain, but with moments asking your friend to breathe before quitting her job, reminding your child to sleep on it, helping someone rewrite a story they were too ashamed to tell themselves. Strength isn't always what holds the sword. Sometimes it's what holds the silence. You may feel tired, like your strength is invisible, but invisible doesn't mean imagined. You hold families together. You calm chaos. You absorb more than anyone knows and still show up with soft eyes. Your spine is where your strength lives. Quiet, unshakable, holy. You don't bark orders. You don't demand reverence. But people feel safer when you're near. And in a world always chasing dominance, your quiet power is radically countercultural. You carry strength in your spine, not your voice. And that's the sixth sign. You look out the window sometimes and wonder if it's all adding up, this life of errands, dinners, doctor's appointments, late night laundry, the texts you never got a reply to, the thank yous that never came. You wonder if any of it matters in the long run. And it does. You don't chase applause, you plant legacy. The Proverbs 31 woman is praised not for popularity, but for fruit. Her children rise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Not instantly, not every day, but eventually, because what she plants takes root. You're a planter, not a performer. In the world of Bible times, a legacy wasn't just a name on a scroll. It was a pattern of life passed down a way of being. And women, though rarely named, were often the ones who established the moral spine of a family for generations. Historians still debate how many of their contributions were erased or overshadowed, but we see their fingerprints in every enduring tradition, every spoken blessing, every habit that began. Because that's what my mother did. That's you. You make the soup that heals. You hum the song that becomes a lullaby in your daughter's mouth 20 years from now. You pick up the broken thing no one else notices and fix it again. Your acts of love aren't wasted. They're planted. There's a quirky archaeological finding from a small village near Galilee, an inscription on a clay jar that reads, "She taught me to wait." That's it. No name, no context, just that, a fragment of someone's legacy. And perhaps the most important thing that woman ever gave. You don't document your goodness, you live it. While others may be chasing likes or followers or validation, you are busy anchoring lives through decency, predictability, and care. No one claps when you pay the bill on time, when you remember the birthday, when you restock the snacks your child loves without being asked. But those moments build safety, and safety grows into trust, and trust becomes legacy. Sometimes you wonder if you're doing enough, and yet people come to you when they're lost. They seek your presence, your patterns, your steadiness. You are the keeper of recipes, of stories, of values they didn't even realize they inherited. You aren't loud about it. You just plant, and planting takes faith. You don't always see the results, but you trust that what's hidden in the soil is becoming something good. Your legacy may not look like monuments, but it will look like healing resilience and calm that echo long after you're gone. You don't chase applause, you plant legacy, and that's the seventh sign. You forget things, you burn the toast, you lose your temper and immediately regret it. Sometimes you cry quietly so no one sees, and other times you're just tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that comes from caring too much too often for too long. And still you rise. You are covered in grace, not perfection. The Proverbs 31 woman isn't flawless. She's faithful. The scripture doesn't say she never messes up. It says her worth is far above rubies. It says she fears the Lord, not that she fears failing. And she's praised because she's real, not robotic. You show up anyway. Even when you feel like a mess. Even when you snapped 5 minutes ago. Even when you whispered, "I'm doing my best" under your breath, while folding laundry that just keeps multiplying. Historians still argue whether Proverbs 31 was written as a literal description of one woman or as an idealized poem meant to honor many. But no one argues about this. The tone is one of reverence, not expectation. It's a celebration, not a checklist. And you and all your imperfection are worthy of that celebration. There's a quirky midrash story about a woman who accidentally ruined a sacred festival meal by forgetting to salt the bread. Embarrassed, she cried. Her husband, instead of scolding her, said if this house was built on perfect salt, it would have crumbled long ago. That's your kind of home. One built on grace, laughter, and second chances. You forget. You fall short, but you forgive. You adjust. You begin again. You've comforted others through their shame, even while carrying your own. You've told friends it's okay to not be okay, even on days when you didn't believe it for yourself. You've extended grace while needing it, and that's holy work. Perfection demands performance. Grace allows transformation. You might feel like you're barely holding it together some days, but what if I told you that's what makes you exactly the kind of woman Proverbs 31 is really about? Not someone who gets it right every time, but someone who keeps returning to love, who keeps showing up, trying again, offering more than she thinks she has day after day, year after year. You are not failing. You are growing, quietly, beautifully, resiliently. You are covered in grace, not perfection, and that's the eighth sign. So now as the night deepens and the world outside softens its edges, let this truth settle gently over you. You don't have to become her you already are. Not because of the checklist, not because you bake bread from scratch or quote ancient scripture in Hebrew, but because of the way you love, the way you endure, the way you still care even when you're tired. You're the woman who gets up again after failing, who says kind things even when no one says them back, who holds the center quietly like gravity. You don't need a stage. You don't need a crown. You need rest. You need peace. And you need to hear this. You are enough. You are honored. You are seen. Maybe not by everyone, but certainly by the one who made you. The same God who inspired those words in Proverbs had you in mind too. So tonight, as the candle flickers low and the dishes are finally done, let grace wrap around you like a soft blanket. Let the quiet become your applause. Because the legacy you're building, the love you give, the wisdom you whisper, the calm you carry, is more sacred than you know. Breathe deeply now. Release the need to be more. Embrace the truth of who you already are. And let yourself rest, not because everything is finished, but because you are still becoming a woman of strength, a woman of worth, a Proverbs 31 woman in all your messy, magnificent beauty.